Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks and the deadline and what they do now that Giannis is going to miss the next month due to a calf injury. We're going to talk about some other teams at the deadline. We're going to talk about the Hornets, the Blazers, and the 76ers, three teams that have been really, really fun to try and figure out recently. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? We survived the cold here in Southwest Kansas. We've probably got, 4 or 5 inches of snow, no moisture in it whatsoever. I will say, Sam, I got a little bit nervous on Saturday morning. I went out to shovel said snow in very much negative temperatures, thought that I had put enough layers on. And about 15 minutes in, my fingertips started to hurt extremely bad. And I was like, I better hustle this up before I do something stupid. And it was cold. It was very cold. I had 2 layers of gloves on and my fingertips were still not doing well. So hopefully everybody out there has been able to stay warm and kind of get through this. It hasn't been great. And I think some places have gotten more ice and lost. We prepared for losing power and we didn't, but I know it's hitting other parts as well right now here in the States. So hopefully everybody's staying warm and out of this right now.
Well, forgive me for
I know you are
a friend of the program here, Mark Titus, but unfortunately the weather was cold outside, but the Nets heated us up in college basketball over the weekend. I can't remember a better college basketball day than what we got on Saturday. I actually think it is, look, at the very least in the 10 years that I've been doing this, it is the best college basketball performance day that I've ever seen.
Is it individual NBA draft performances? I'm sure there's days where the actual games and went down to the wire and overtime and stuff. But when you're talking about guys, especially near the top of the draft, that you had to go watch. I think there was 5 games I said, I have to go watch these before we record the NBA draft show. And I know that's not what this is, but yes. And I was very pleased that my son did not have basketball games yesterday. So I was able to sit home and catch up on all of those and not be behind.
So if you want to watch the NBA draft show, go to the Substack, gametheorysamv.substack.com. We will have that up for you on Tuesday. We will break down Keaton Wagler's 46 against Purdue on the road, a top 5 team in the country, who dropped 46, and it was a ridiculous 46. Kingston Fleming's had 42.
Real quick, Sam, we should probably talk about Braden Smith a little bit from that game as well, because it's not like he sucked. So
it was great. Yeah, no beef. Have some beef with Purdue's defensive scheme, but no beef with Braden Smith.
Correct.
Kingston Flemings goes for 42. AJ DeBanza goes for 42. That was interesting, at least. Maybe not as impressive as the other 40 balls, in my opinion, but it did have 40. Nate Ament goes for 29. Dalen Swain had 28. Cam Boozer had 32. Acuff had 30. Michael Brown came back as well and was not bad.
That was the other one.
Game. Yeah. Like, I genuinely think this was the best day of NBA draft centric performances from freshmen in maybe the history of college basketball, just point blank. Never before had there been 3 freshmen that had dropped 40 on the same day before, according to ESPN. And all 3 of these guys are potential top 5, top 7 picks that ended up dropping 40. So please go to the Substack, gametheorysamv.substack.com. You will get an in-depth breakdown of everything that happened on Saturday. And it was truly an unbelievable day of college basketball. and we'll break down all of the prospects that played really, really well. So gametheorysamv.substack.com for the NBA draft show. It has moved over to the Substack just for algorithm reasons on the YouTube side. Okay. Bryce, the other thing that happened that was big news this weekend in the NBA was Giannis Antetokounmpo played on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday. I can't remember at this point. And the Bucks lose. And after the game, he says that he kind of felt something in his calf pop, I believe. Not like an Achilles or anything, but felt something kind of go. And that he's expecting to miss 4 to 6 weeks.
Real quick. So I actually watched this game. It was against the Nuggets. The Nuggets had built a big lead without like Jamal Murray. Peyton Watson didn't play, by the way. Speaking of the Substack, Peyton Watson breakdown over on the Substack. I finally got to something there because we didn't have school on Friday. Milwaukee is making a comeback, Sam, and Giannis gets into the game, but like he's pulling up at half court sometimes and eventually like has to pull himself from the game and, you know, all that. So you could see it kind of coming in the game. You just weren't sure what.
Yeah, Julian Strother was the one that kind of won the Nuggets that game with a big performance. I mean, look, like Tim Hardaway Jr. was fine and Bruce Brown was fine and Aaron Gordon played. Like it was a whole team performance, just to be honest with you. Like they just played really, really well. But Strother was big in that game. You know, he just, you know, it wasn't even like drilling shots. It was driving. It was like getting to spots in a way that he typically doesn't. But regardless, like you said, the Nuggets get out to a big lead and, you know, Giannis tries to will them back and ultimately has to come out. That creates this, and this is my first takeaway of the day. The Bucks are now 18 and 26. They are in 11th in the Eastern Conference. I am not going to come out straight and say that the Bucks need to trade Giannis. What I will say, though, is that I think that Giannis needs to give the Bucks an answer on a potential extension. Giannis is extension eligible in October. The best thing for the Bucks to do at this point, given that Giannis is going to miss all of this time, they should probably be tanking. I know that like some people think the Bucks don't have access to their pick this year. They do.
Really interesting. Yep.
Yeah, the Bucks have access to their pick this year. It's just the worst of theirs and Washington's. And Washington is also obviously in a position where they are not looking to win basketball games. The problem for the Bucks over the next month is that they go on like 2 pretty rough road trips here moving forward. So they have Dallas on Sunday. We don't know the result of that game before we record it. But they go on the road for the Sixers, Wizards, Celtics. Then they have 3 straight home games against the Bulls, Pelicans, Pacers. Honestly, 3 games that they can win. But then they have 4 more road games right after, you know, kind of on each side of the All-Star break. Orlando twice, Oklahoma City, and then the first game after the All-Star break is New Orleans. And then after that, it's 4 straight home games, but it's Toronto, Miami, Cleveland, New York. I think they win like 3 of those games if he's not back yet, Bryce. That gets us out to a month. That gets us to February 27th. Again, Bryce, I think they win like, they're not going to win many of these games. I don't think. This team, every time I watch them, it just feels like they look broken. Like we talked about the Thunder game on Wednesday. They looked really rough there. The game against Denver, they, you know, again, just looked incredibly rough in that game. And, you know, Giannis, I think, had taken something like 8 shots and he'd gotten to the line 16 times. Don't get me wrong. Like he was attempting to will them back. Like this was not an effort thing from Giannis's perspective, but you know, he took 8 field goal attempts in that game because of the calf on some level, I'm sure. And I don't know what to, it feels like this is broken. Doc Rivers, you know, we gave Doc a lot of credit early in the season. It felt like Doc had kind of figured some things out with spacing and how to make it work around Giannis. That has gone away. Doc has been one of the worst coaches in the league this year, I think, at this point.
25th in offensive rating this year.
Yeah, like I don't think the spacing really works at all. I have not really enjoyed the rotations. I don't think that they've made sense at all. On top of that, like you said, the offense, they're 25th in offensive rating right now, according to Basketball Reference. Unsurprisingly, Giannis being out there tends to help their offense. They have a 122 offensive rating when Giannis is on the court. They have a 108 offensive rating when Giannis is off of the court, according to Data Baller. So they're winning their possessions with Giannis on the court by 5.6 points per 100 possessions. They're losing their possessions with Giannis off of the court by 11 points per 100 possessions. Again, like that stretch of games there, I don't think they're going to win many games. So the best thing for them to do now is to tank, in my opinion. I think that their best position now is to tank. And that would involve Giannis like sitting most of the year moving forward here. And I don't know if he's going to be into that or not. Frankly, he doesn't seem like the kind of person that would be into that. But I think that before the February deadline here on the 5th, the Bucks now need an answer from Giannis. Hey, and this isn't just like, are you signing an extension with us? Right? Yes or no? It's a conversation. It's back and forth. It's, hey, we are willing to do this, this, and this. We're not going to trade our pick this year because we think that that could be a really high level pick. But we're willing to go and get you help if you agree to stay. We're willing to go do what it takes to get you to stay. But we need that commitment now. Like, I know it's 9 months in advance or 8 months in advance almost. But we need to know what you're thinking now, because otherwise, this is still probably the best time to trade you and get the most value, because at the end of the day, you then get Giannis for 2 playoff runs before he has to sign an extension versus 1. And maybe Bucks fans will say, like, the return won't be different in the summer versus what it is now. Maybe. Giannis is so good that, like, that might be true. But what I think you need to go to Giannis and do now is have a conversation and say, hey, we're willing to go get you Ja Morant. Like, if you really want Ja Morant, we will trade Ryan Rollins for Ja Morant. That's probably what it would have to be to get it done. Like, we'll do that for you. If you're willing to stay, if we go get him, great. If you're willing to stay, if we go get X player, if we go get Y player, we're willing to do that, right? The other thing that they can do is say, like, look, this core would be fun, right? They can present a core. Look, Giannis, we want to tank the rest of the year is the reality. We're going to hold you out for the full 6 weeks. Maybe you come back later in the year and, just continue to get back. But if I presented you with this idea, Bryce, where they go out and they get Ja Morant, they end up with like the 6th overall pick, they get Keaton Wagler in the draft, something like that, right? You have Giannis, you have Miles Turner still. Maybe a couple other, maybe you still have Bobby Portis. Like, you still have some flexibility to go get a couple of other rotation players in the summer. Does that move you at all? Like, I think that's kind of an interesting core if I'm a Bucks fan.
I think any future that still has Giannis a part of it makes sense for the Bucks. I do. So yes, like if Giannis will say, I will sign the extension, you guys continue to be creative and do everything you can to build out this roster. I would understand if John Horst in the front office decide to do that. Like, I would get it. I truly would. I think another interesting aspect of the Giannis extension, I heard this the other day, I can't remember which podcast, but that extension is like, it's in October. The deadline is October. It's
Correct.
not.
It's October. Well, are you saying the deadline for when he has to sign it, or?
Yes, right? Like,
yes.
Or when, yes, the deadline for when he has to. So point being, Giannis could drag it out past the the meat of the offseason, I guess is my point. Like, it's not like
they literally can't sign him to the extension until October.
Oh, okay. I thought he can't even sign it until October. Okay. I thought
he can't sign it until October 1st is what it is.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was the deadline of when he could extend it or could sign it.
Right.
He can't sign
it. But like, look, again, this is where like the conversations have to happen. And to me, I think they have to happen now because he has all of the information. Here's the pieces of information he doesn't have. He doesn't have the information on who they're going to draft, how high they end up in the draft. And I guess in theory, he doesn't have all the information on who they could go get, but I think they could present him with some interesting options at the deadline to go get. And part of the reason that I think they need to find out now on Giannis is I think the price tags to go get some of the guys that could help them moving forward will probably be cheaper at the deadline now than they will be in the summer, which means that if Giannis is staying, it makes more sense to go attack this deadline now. But if Giannis is leaving, it doesn't make any sense to go buy. They should be trying to sell, right?
Yeah.
So this is why I think that the biggest thing for me moving forward with them is they need to go find and figure out, is Giannis willing to do this? And I get that, like, in general, they haven't tended to have these conversations super well. Maybe they haven't always been as upfront with one another as they needed to be, whatever it is, right? I think you need to get this information now. And if the information that comes back is Giannis is not signing an extension in October, or there's real hesitancy on Giannis signing an extension in October because of the way the team is performing, we're willing to get rid of Doc. We're willing to go get you your players. We're willing to go do this. We're willing to go do that. If he still says no, I think you have to move him at this point.
So real quick, one other thing. I think the pick is also the swap with the Pelicans. Not that it matters a whole lot, but
yeah,
not the Wizards. But okay, so I was thinking about this, Sam, today. Do you think the Bucks have tried, and I want to emphasize the word tried. Do you think the Bucks have tried to do everything they can to do right by Giannis in his time in Milwaukee since he's become a superstar?
Unequivocally, yes, I would argue.
Do you think
you can argue that they've made the wrong decisions?
Yeah, I said try. That's why I wanted.
Yeah, that they've evaluated poorly, but I think undeniably they have tried everything that they thought was right to do this.
Do you think Giannis has essentially given everything he can to the Milwaukee Bucks and that organization in his team there?
Undeniably, yes.
So why do either of these think that they're going to be the bad guy if they part ways? Like, this is my thing. Everything I hear is like, well, they don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to be the bad guy. I don't think anybody's going to think either side is a bad guy if they come together. I think the only way this would turn out bad is if Giannis pulled a superstar move, which I wouldn't fully blame him, but if he pulled the move where I only want to go to this team and the return isn't very good. If they meet and they decide, you know what, we've done everything we can, but we kind of feel like we've exhausted this. Giannis looks them in the eyes and says, you know what, guys, I've given you everything I can, but I kind of feel like maybe this has run its course. It's time for you guys to rebuild and restart. It's time for me to go finish my career somewhere else. Let's find the best place that maybe will return. Like, he'll want to play with good players. So maybe it's a draft pick haul. But like, I was thinking about this. If you're a Bucks fan and Giannis gets traded to, let's say, Atlanta, and you end up with 2 picks in the 2026 draft in the top 10 and potentially the top 5, along with Risa Shea and cap space and future picks, are you just like pissed at Giannis that he decided he needed to go somewhere else? Maybe they are. Maybe like I don't wear enough of a fan hat anymore to understand it. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if he works with Milwaukee to not just get him where he wants to go, but get them a legit return, I think everybody can look back and say, everybody tried their best. Everybody went full out. And I'm leaving Milwaukee in a decent situation not the best because they have like dead cap on the books and some stuff like that. But to your point, you don't let them go mortgage the future even more at this deadline and then ask for a trade this summer. I think that's when bad feelings can start to happen, is if you let them dig deeper and then ask out last minute.
Yeah. This is why, to me, like, the rubber kind of has to hit the road now.
Sure.
And not later. Because this is where like the risk starts to come in. Like if the Bucks go try to buy now and then like he gets moved in the summer or whatever because he wants to leave, that's where some bad feelings I think can happen. Right. It just reminds me of the Kevin Garnett Minnesota situation. Like, yeah, I think Minnesota fans were disappointed to lose Kevin Garnett, but they got it. They understood it. And I think Milwaukee fans like are never going to blame Giannis for this. Like if he acts like an asshole on the way out and causes problems, yes, they will blame him for it. But he hasn't really done that to this point. He's kind of actively tried to avoid this at this point. I don't know that he's going, like, look, I can't tell the future. Maybe he will at some point, but it just feels like the Garnett situation, and everybody in Minnesota loves Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
So, right. And I think everybody and here's the real issue, I think, for the Milwaukee front office, right? I think everybody blames the Minnesota front office and blames like everything with Glenn Taylor and things on why they couldn't build a contender. But the difference between the Garnett situation in Minnesota and the Milwaukee situation with Giannis is that Giannis actually won a title there. And I think that there will be some bad blood toward the front office and everybody, because they weren't able to build a contender like properly that could be long-term and sustaining around Giannis. But I think that at the end of the day, people are going to look back incredibly fondly on when they won the title with Milwaukee as well. So it reminds me of the Garnett situation so much. And I don't think that there's going to be a ton of bad blood there on either side if this just goes down the right way now.
And if you get a return, I think that's important as well. I think as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, if I try to truly put my fan shoes on, if I'm a Bucks fan and the return is substantial, I think then I don't end up frustrated at anybody. If the return is very minimal because Giannis says, I want to go to the Knicks and only the Knicks, and that's where you're going to trade me, and, doesn't at least give him a few teams to have to, negotiate and leverage and all of that, I think that's when it could potentially go south. I guess just the more I've thought about it, I always hear this, well, Giannis doesn't want to be the bad guy, but the Bucks don't want to be the front office that trades Giannis. And the more I'm just like, I think everybody would understand. Like, as someone who's not a fan that just analyzes basketball, I honestly, having watched this team this year, thinking there might be a chance for it to be decent, I would understand if Giannis was ready to make a move and go somewhere else. And I would understand if the Bucks front office was ready, like, even for a new challenge. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, hey, let's move on from Giannis. Then you'd probably move some of these other pieces, pick the ones that you're going to keep, Ryan Rollins, whoever. Let's go hit these draft picks. Let's make this move moving forward. And again, I feel like they tried to do everything they could. Did it all work out? No. But I mean, they waived and stretched Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner. Like, they made the Drew Holiday. They did all of these moves trying to build a consistent contender. Again, you can fault them for the wrongdoings, the mistakes. Some of this was injuries, maybe why they don't have another title. But ultimately, I think they can part ways and everybody can be like, yeah, we get it. And then we can evaluate Giannis in a new place, and we can evaluate a Bucks front office on a rebuild. I'm kind of the point where I'm here for that more than this continuing to try to move forward. I know that's easier for me to say, though.
So can I just say the team that I think that makes the most sense for Milwaukee to do this with now?
Sure.
So the number one would be New York if they could somehow get the Portland picks back with like Towns or Bridges going to Portland in some way, or maybe just Portland goes for it. But I think they're probably a little bit early.
The Milwaukee's picks in Portland is what you're saying.
So Milwaukee's picks currently are in Portland for 28, 29, and 30. The 28 pick is like way convoluted and complicated, and I don't know if they can even get that back like fully. I think that they can get most of it back, but maybe not all of it. 29 and 30 though they could fairly easily. So like, is there a way that he can go to, a team? New York makes sense to me because I can see Portland wanting one of Towns or Bridges or Anunoby. I guess I could see Portland as well. I should just mention that. Like, why not bring up Portland? We're going to talk about the Blazers a little bit later, but like, I don't know what Giannis would think about signing long-term in Portland. And, I just don't know where his head would be on that. The team beyond that, beyond like looping in Portland, is the third team. And maybe you can do this with this team anyway. The team that tracks to me most is Golden State. And here's the reason why. If I am Milwaukee in a Giannis trade, I'm trying to get everybody's picks for the longest term possible. And I want the picks to have the highest potential value humanly possible. Right? To me, if I was betting on a situation that I would feel comfortable trying to gamble on, betting against those long-term picks from 2029 out to 2032, right? I would love to bet on Golden State, given that Stephen Curry is 37?
37.
Draymond Green, I think, is 36. You would have Giannis there, whose, body is starting to have its injury issues, right? With the calf particularly. I would really think that the best set of picks that you can bet on is probably Golden State's, and they have the Jimmy deal that they can send out in this now. And if you're telling me you're pairing Giannis and Stephen Curry and Draymond Green long term, that's pretty cool. Like, honestly, that's pretty cool. I think that, and that brings Golden State its next superstar. I don't know, like that feels like the best synergy of giving giving Milwaukee real upside on pick value long term that they currently lack because they don't own their picks outside of the 2031 pick in maybe 2032. I can't remember which ones they own and don't. I know that they own 2031 though. Like, Golden State would give them real pick upside when those guys age out, and also would give Golden State its next superstar in the post Stephen Curry era, while still getting to have Stephen Curry on the roster and getting to pair a real legitimate top 5 superstar in the league with another, legitimate top 6 or 7 superstar in the league in Stephen Curry, and seeing if they can win a title in the next 2 years with Steph and end the Steph era right.
Yeah,
that feels like, to me, the best synergy of everything.
That one's interesting because, and I think in that scenario, then if you're Milwaukee, this is digging in for a long-term rebuild in that scenario, as opposed to maybe some others that people could throw out. And I don't think that that's all bad. As we talked about at the top, you might be drafting a top 5, top 6 player in this draft. And so, you have a little bit of runway to let them grow. You have that Dame money on the books. It's out there for a while anyway, but maybe you can clear off some of the rest of your books, the Miles Turner contract eventually. You can get off. That's about the only long-term money, I guess. So it only take you a couple of years to clear your books, but you could end up operating as a cap space team, even with the dead money, and, take the path of taking on bad contracts to bring in more future draft capital, all of that, and just say like, hey, this is a 3-4 year plan where we're going to, hopefully hit on this first pick in 2026, but then really it's about building out and then capitalizing on those picks down the future 3 years from now when Golden State, theoretically, like you say, Curry and Draymond are out and maybe Giannis has hit, some sort of, not wall, but at 35, maybe he's starting to decline a little bit. So that one's interesting. I do think that one would then, like I say, put you in a little bit of a longer term rebuild than maybe some other paths you could take to be a little bit quicker.
So what I would say is, like, could you get Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski for Giannis and Kyle Kuzma, along with Golden State's 26, 28, 30, and 32 firsts, and then their 31 and 29 pick swaps.
Oh, man.
Can you get all of that from Golden State? This is Giannis. Giannis is a stud, and you're not sending back like crazy present value. Really, like the idea with Kuzma for Kuminga is that like you're sending off an extra year of Kuzma money for the flyer on Kuminga. You see what he is. Perfect situation for Kuminga to see if he's something. If not, cool. And then you get all the picks.
I think this comes down to Giannis's health, Sam. I think this comes down to Giannis's health. I don't think Golden State can give up all of that and not get a healthy Giannis this year. Because
is he going to be healthy for the playoffs this year? Is
correct.
Your question?
Yes, and here's why. It's not the Giannis factor. It's the factor of if I'm going to trade all of these first round picks, I have to maximize every year left of Steph Curry, including this year. And so if I have any reservations that Giannis isn't going to give me a chance to maximize Steph and Draymond this season, then I don't think I want to give up as much draft capital because So I would want, and I assume he's going to, like in this scenario, I assume he probably will be able to come back, but I would want, nothing's guaranteed, but I would want some details on the medical of the calf and all of that to know what my opportunity was for him to be full healthy this year for a playoff run. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I mean, to me, that deal really sets up Milwaukee well long term. It sets up Golden State with its next superstar and lets them end the Curry, run pretty well. Maybe they don't get the 2028 first rounder or something. If I'm them, I want the 2030, the 2029 pick swap, the 2031 pick swap, and the 2020 or the 2032 pick. And I want this year's pick too. Like I want, maybe you only give up 3 and 2 swaps or something if that's the case. But I want just about the full boat if I'm Milwaukee. And I think that it's reasonable for Milwaukee to ask for the full boat for what it's worth. That's what Giannis is worth. And that's probably the team, given the age of the guys involved, that's probably the team that I would target if I was Milwaukee. And I think Golden State would make sense to do. It makes some sense for Golden State to do this.
Okay, how about instead of Kuzma, what if you sent Miles Turner? I feel like Miles Turner can make sense with Golden State. And would he? Well, maybe not. Could you play Draymond? Just gonna have to play the 5 with Giannis there. I was just thinking then I think you could get, then the draft capital stuff makes even more sense to me.
Sure. Yeah. No, if it's, you could try a lineup of Steph, whoever you want with, Draymond, Giannis, and Turner. You would have a spacer at the 5. You'd have to have somebody. Maybe you keep Moses Moody in that situation, and it's
in the perimeter.
Steph, Moody, Dre, Giannis, and Turner. And that lineup is huge and would be. Really
Here's why I bring that up from the Milwaukee perspective is, that's the only long-term money on your books. If you got rid of Turner, even if like you said, even with 2027. Even with the Dame dead money, your cap space could be ridiculous. You're going to have to fill in the roster with some guys, but I wouldn't mind getting off Turner in that deal and off that contract if I'm going down this road.
The thing is that I think that you could still get value for Turner anyway. I think you'd be able to trade Turner for pick capital in either regard, but if you're getting the pick capital from Golden State, that's fine too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that's, what you assess to be best on the market, that makes total sense. But that, to me, that's the team. If I'm Milwaukee, that's the team I want to make the trade with. I think. Miami, I think, here's the other thing too. I don't know how good Joe Lacob is at this. And I think Mike Dunleavy is smart, but I don't know how much power Dunleavy has in this circumstance is the problem. And on top of it, I don't know, like looking around the league at the teams that would probably be targeted. Like I think Leon Rose in New York is probably pretty good at this. I think that the Miami front office is definitely good at this. I think that, a lot of the other teams, San Antonio's front office, I think is good at this. Like if the Lakers would try to get in on this, like they just have a crazy amount of money now with Mark Walter. And you can make the same case for Golden State with Joe Lacob, but like, I don't know. I think we have some evidence that Joe Lacob might not be amazing at this, right? As an owner. And he has Stephen Curry, and that's like a huge factor here. So if he has to rebuild around Giannis, maybe that might not work in the same way, right? So I think that's the team that I would want to bet on is Golden State. If I'm Milwaukee moving forward and I could get their if I get any teams like full boat of picks here for Giannis, I think that's the team that I want to target.
Sure.
And Golden State with Giannis and Steph, like favorites to win the title, maybe. Maybe not favorites. Maybe Oklahoma City still the favorite, but like well and truly in the picture to win the title at that point and end the Stephen Curry era, right? So
sure.
That's what immediately came to my mind whenever I saw this, and I wonder if that could end up coming to fruition. Either maybe it could be in the off season. Who knows? But we shall see. Okay. Before we move on to the next takeaway, we're going to shout out the friends over at Trade Coffee. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tackling an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why it should start with a perfect cup of coffee, crafted just for you by Trade. Trade is the #1 U.S. coffee destination, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Trade's experts have taste tested thousands of coffees to curate over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or your favorites, they'll handpick the perfect coffee just for you, even cold brew for those hot summer days. Just take their quiz, and in under a minute, they'll match you with your perfect coffee. If that first bag isn't quite right, they're going to replace it for free until they nail it. Trade's prices are on par with grocery store brands, but the quality is just drastically better. And on top of that, you're going to support local roasters, which makes it a win-win for everybody in the coffee ecosystem. Trade is just the absolute best partner that we can have for the show. I trust them so much, and I am a huge fan of their product. And right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/game. That's DRINKTRADE.com/game, GAME. That's drinktrade.com/game for 50% off your 1-month trial. drinktrade.com/game. Okay, the way we're going to do takeaways today is all three of mine are more deadline related. So we're going to go through mine to start, and then Bryce will give his because we're going to get into some more basketball stuff later on. And here's what my next takeaway was. Honestly, it's more of a question for Bryce. Who is, outside of Giannis, if he gets moved at the deadline, and I'm skeptical that Giannis is going to get moved at the deadline for what it's worth. Outside of Giannis, who is the player that is like the best player, most relevant player to get moved at this deadline? You're muted.
I didn't want to make you guys listen to me drink my cold coffee that my lovely wife made for me and brought to me during recording. I apologize.
Shout out Trade Coffee. There we go.
So my first, my answer, and then I want to get into some other players and some other ideas. Obviously, we'll end up throwing out a lot of names here. So just my straight up answer, I think, is Michael Porter Jr. Like, I know we've talked about, you've made kind of the pitch of, hey, maybe Brooklyn just keeps him and all of that. Like, and I hear it out. I understand it. I just wonder if at a certain point, the offers come in pretty decent. He seems like a player that a few different teams could be in on. So maybe you get a market that becomes, I don't want to say robust, but very enticing. And if I'm Brooklyn, I'm like, man, like maybe he should stop helping us. Not that they're winning a ton of games, but like maybe he's going to help us win a few too many games than what we would like. So just to start us up there, I think my just straight up answer, simple answer is Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if Porter actually gets moved or not, honestly. I think there are a lot of cases for moving him. We talked about them beforehand, from, the injury history to them, potentially wanting to move forward and, lose some games. I also think that there's a real case for keeping him because he's a guy that makes sense next to developing players, and he's really good right now, and he's not that old. I think that Brooklyn can go either way on that, and it would make some sense, but you better have an extension number that you feel good about right now if you're going to do that. Can you get him on a somewhat cheaper extension longer term past this season that's like a little bit less than what his number is now? Like, if I'm him, like, I don't know why I'm agreeing to that, given that I'm probably going to make the All-Star team this year, but like, maybe the injury history would have him worried, and you can get him on a bit of a lower deal. I think that if you can get him on like a real solid number extension wise, I'm pretty good with that. I'm pretty good with keeping him, but you're right that there's a number of teams out there that I think will have real interest in Michael Porter Jr., including the team that is behind you there. The Detroit Pistons would make a ton of sense for Porter. The name here is probably John Morant, but we've talked a ton about John Morant, and sure, I don't know that we really need to. I
didn't consider him, to be honest with you, Sam. I realize he qualifies for it, but I was just like, we've talked about him so much, and we've talked about some of these other names as well. I didn't really want to throw him out as my answer. So
yeah, and look, like Ja played 2 games last week and was freaking awesome in both of them. He had 24 points, 5 rebounds, 13 assists against Orlando, and what was that, London? I think it was London, not Berlin. And then came back on the 21st against Atlanta and had 23, 2 rebounds, 12 assists in 29 minutes, right? Like, he was awesome last week. He was so good. And then he now has a left elbow injury that will keep him out for 3 weeks. I mean, I'm sure that there's something bothering him, but like, who knows how conservative or non-conservative Memphis is being with that, right? In order to keep him fresh for a team that might be trading for him. I mean, look, a quick 2-game sample of him playing incredibly well to remind teams how good he is. Probably not going to do better than that, than what he did in those 2 games. The guy I kind of want to talk about is Sabonis. I want to talk about Domantas Sabonis, because he's another guy that has been injured for a large portion of the year and did finally just come back recently. Like, his last, really, he came back, like 10 or so days ago, like in that ballpark.
Yeah, he started, I haven't watched the full game yet. I think I watched, they played the Pistons today, just to finish my thought there. He started in this game. The game I watched of the Kings before that, I think he also started. And then there was one before that, I feel like he came off the bench. Maybe like on the 19th against the Blazers, he came off the bench. So it's been a little bit, 10 days or so here. Yeah.
Yeah, I did watch the Cleveland game. I thought he was great in the Cleveland game.
Okay, so I watched that one as well.
Yeah, I thought he looked awesome. He had 24 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 turnovers. He does not look great on defense right now. Like, we can stipulate
that's a very nice way of saying it, because I have some very negative notes in the first. Listen, Detroit ends up having the best first half scoring of the season, and I haven't even watched all of it yet. And he has been brutal on the defensive end. There's a ball screen rep that's just awful, and it's Isaiah Stewart, who I love, but isn't necessarily known for his ball screen and roll game. It's pretty rough right now, Sam.
Yeah, and Sabonis is interesting because he's a 2-time All-NBA player, 3-time All-Star, and this is a guy that like has a real track record of success, right? And there are a lot of teams that seemingly have some interest, right? I know that Sam Amick has reported like Chicago and Washington are interested. I know that the guys up in Toronto, like all of the reporters up in Toronto at this point, have mentioned him as a name that front office is interested in. Can we talk about the Toronto thing with Sabonis real quick? Because
we touched on this a little bit, right?
The more I think about it, the more I think it doesn't make sense at all.
Okay, interesting.
I understand that they need a big, in that they just need size on some level. Like they're just very small when Pirtle is not in there. And I get it. And I understand the idea in terms of what they're thinking of, like, hey, let's go get this amazing screener who can play in dribble handoffs and can, get offensive flow moving for us a little bit better. My issue with this is that the deal would probably have to be structured around either Emmanuel Quickly, who is really their only source of 3-point volume right now, or RJ Barrett. And the whole reason that you're moving Barrett in all likelihood is to create a little bit more space for guys like Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes to be able to operate. I actually don't know that getting Sabonis does that, especially for Ingram, because Sabonis also really likes to operate in that like elbows extended area, let's call it. And that's where Ingram likes to get into. And you could say, oh yeah, we'll run like dribble handoff exchanges and everything with them, and he'll get some separation and be able to get to his mid-range jumpers and everything. And I get that. But when Sabonis doesn't have the ball, I feel like he's probably going to be cluttering that area a bit. And I think it's actually easier for more mobile guys like RJ Barrett and players of that kind of ilk who do like those areas, catch the ball on the right side of the court, go downhill to your left, get into those elbow areas that, Barrett likes as a driver, everything like that. I feel like, to me, it's easier to make the spacing work with more mobile players, right?
So you would like the okay. So, but if you move,
I think it's almost easier to make it work with Barrett in those circumstances as a player who also like those areas than it is to make it work with like Sabonis as a player in those areas, because Sabonis is going to be a little bit more stationary and kind of take up those spaces a little bit more than what Barrett does when you're like constantly moving on offense. And maybe Darko would have like a real plan. I think Darko is a creative offensive coach and is pretty sharp at trying to figure out these ways to make, screening and spacing work. But it's just a lot of bodies in that area for him in a way that even like when it was him and Fox, it was just him and Fox that were trying to operate in those areas. It wasn't like 3 guys on the court trying to operate in those areas.
Okay. Yeah. And Scotty likes to operate. So I think the other one, I hadn't thought about this as much. My initial thought was just like, okay, you bring in Sabonis, you make him the fulcrum of the offense. You let him operate at the top of the key. And then you let all of these guys, play off of it. Theoretically, they're able to protect him on the defensive end. Scotty is, Colin Murray Boyles is. I guess the other thought as you bring that up, well, I think you could run some fun actions with Scotty and Sabonis. I think Scotty is the best in the half court offensively, operating right in the middle of the court in the areas we're kind of talking about with Sabonis as well. So I do actually then also wonder, how's this going to look like with Scotty? I'm not saying he can't learn to like cut off of him and move and all of that, but it is interesting because like my initial thought was just like, okay, here's a creator, right? Like especially if you're going to move quickly, you got to have some sort of creator. But if he doesn't create in the right ways, or he's operating the spaces that these other guys want to operate, maybe the offense maybe the jump there doesn't even make sense or doesn't even happen. Even if I do think the defense can probably stay status quo with where they're at right now, which has been really good. I think they probably could protect him, but is it worth that if you're not really elevating the offense to a place that puts you in, another level, another tier in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, like that's a huge question for me too. Like, does Sabonis really elevate the offense to the level to which he takes things away on defense? And honestly, the more I've thought about their defensive scheme particularly, and I'll be interested to see what you think about this, like, they're so aggressive on defense.
He doesn't fit. You're right. No, this is true.
That like, you're really going to be hanging him out to dry as the rim protector sometimes, right? Like sometimes the hyper aggressive defense really works, but like there are other times where that backfires, right? And you do get cooked and you're relying on a great backside defender to be there to kind of clean things up a little bit, right?
Or relying on him to be able to go be aggressive away, right? Like go be aggressive away from the basket and then let Scotty and whoever clean up. I don't know why I refer to him by his first name like we're best friends. But let Scotty Barnes or whoever clean up at the rim. Well, Sabonis isn't going to do, like, he's not going to be great at doing that, right? Like you need him to just be in the paint, being a physical presence kind of on both ends. And it is interesting where defensively he doesn't make sense in terms of what I think is Toronto's identity on the defensive end. And what I love about their identity, I don't know that he's the right big to fit into that. So, yeah.
Like to me, Sabonis is very similar to Trae Young, where I think Trae Young was a totally solid acquisition for Washington, and I thought that trade made sense for them. And tracks as a developmental booster. As long as they don't sign him to a long-term extension that is like crazy money, I think that deal makes sense for them to try and boost the development of their young guys. I think similarly of Sabonis, where like if you're Washington now, like I worry a little bit about like the potential for nobody getting touches if it's Trae Young and Sabonis like playing off of one another in Washington, right? And like nobody really developing in those roles. I don't know that Washington makes a ton of sense anymore to me now. But like if you're Chicago and you have a guy that you seem to like as a ball screen player in Josh Giddey, and you can get him in dribble handoffs and he can be like the replacement for Vooch, who just like doesn't necessarily shoot it consistently. Given what Chicago's priorities tend to be, where they want to contend and everything, I like at least like compete for the play-in every year. That's a thing that makes more sense to me, I guess, for Sabonis. But I don't know. Like, I guess my point is that when I bring up Sabonis as like the best player outside of Morant or Giannis that might move, I just don't know that it's going to be a crazy loud deadline unless the Giannis thing happens. If the Giannis thing happens, then obviously it's just automatically very loud. But if that doesn't happen, I kind of think we're talking about like maybe Sabonis moves, and it might be a situation that's not super relevant to winning, or it's Toronto in a situation that I don't really love. Maybe it's Morant into God knows what situation. Like who knows who's going to go get Ja at this point. Porter, I think, is probably the right answer, to be honest, if they decide to move him.
Can I throw out a couple other names?
Yeah, but go ahead, please.
So I feel like you've often shot this down, and I don't think you're wrong. The Miami Heat right now are 8th in the East at 24-22. They are 1 game back of 6th, 2.5 back of 5th. Like they could get on a run and, they're only 3.5 back of 4th. I still wonder if one of Tyler Hero or Norm Powell could get moved at the deadline. If there's a team out there that would say, man, we could really use that. And if Miami would be willing to listen because they don't see a future where they keep both of these guys on the roster, and Hero has 1 year left on his deal, and Norman Powell is a unrestricted free agent. So I still wonder if one of those two guys could end up being moved.
Or Wiggins as well. Like he's the other
Wiggins,
one.
Sure.
Right.
I to me, it was just like to me, it makes so much sense for one or the other, for Miami to pick one of these guys or the other. And because, Powell is expiring, I wonder if it doesn't make sense to make that decision here at the deadline.
Yeah. Yes. Honestly, yes. Like all of that makes sense to me. Okay. I think that if you wanted to move one of Hero or Powell, it would track. Like you have the summer to potentially move one of them. Like if you think Powell is going to sign on like a fairly cheapish deal that's kind of similar to what his deal is now, and you think Hero is going to want $40+ million, maybe it is Hero, right? Or maybe you want the space, and maybe it's it for the 2027 offseason, and maybe it's you're thinking Hero is going to be there long term, and you don't want to do that. So maybe maybe that does track.
Norm Powell is the name for the Pistons that I've always liked. Like, I just never talk about it because nobody else talks about it. So I assume it's not realistic. But like, to me, he's what they need. Like, you bring it to for this year, especially.
Actually is right.
No,
yeah.
he's perfect. He comes in, he's going to get
for them.
He's going to get buckets at 3 levels. He plays that position. You move Duncan Robinson to the bench. Like, you could probably get there without moving Tobias Harris, which I think would be important for this year. You try it out for a year. If it's not as perfect as what I think, then he's an unrestricted free agent and you figure it out. Or you realize he is this bucket getter that's exactly what you need, this 3-level scorer, and you sign him to an extension that's not as expensive as maybe some of these other names that we always talk about them trading for. I think Norm Powell would change a lot for the Detroit Pistons moving forward. I just don't ever talk about it because nobody ever talks about Miami actually considering moving him. And that's why, I think it makes sense that they choose one or the other, but that might just be a me thing.
I think they should choose one or the other, and it just depends on what you think Powell's extension number is and everything like that. Like, that's where you have to have the conversation with Powell now about, hey, look, like, we'll agree to a number now, but we'll put it in a desk or whatever and sign you in free agency. I don't know. Like, it's yeah. That's a good name. That's like a good surprise name that I think nobody's thinking a ton about. But if you're Miami and you're trying to potentially gear up for a Giannis deal at some point, like going to get more assets for a guy that's, what's Norm, like 33 or so, like in that ballpark, 32, 33.
32.
That would track. That actually makes sense. That's a good name.
I think those names are like the surprise, but like they could, like, if Norm Powell was in Detroit, I think that changes the Eastern Conference. I think people feel much more comfortable about what they think Detroit can do in the playoffs if Norm Powell is on that team. And I use Detroit because it's low hanging fruit. You could put other teams in that conversation as well. I had some lower hanging, like some other names that I think, like, do we think Ayo Dosunmu actually gets moved? Because I think Ayo Dosunmu makes a difference. Like, he's not as big of a name, but like, I think he's impactful if he goes to a contender and is the third guard on that team or something like that. I think Ayo Dosunmu is really good.
Yeah, like, my idea was, if I am Oklahoma City, am I willing to give up like one of my firsts in Isaiah Joe or something for Ayo? Like, I don't even know that it costs that much, to be clear. Like, it might be,
sure.
Isaiah Joe in like 2 or 3 seconds, right? But the Bulls love these, player for player swaps. Joe's on a totally reasonable deal moving forward. The reason that you do that, if you're Oklahoma City, is that you get like an extra pseudo ball handler, which could be helpful for them. And then you have the Isaiah Joe number off of the books moving forward. And then you have a player that's probably a little bit of a better fit for the team this year that can help you a little bit more. That's always been, I don't think Oklahoma City is really going to do anything at the deadline. That's always been my like pie in the sky. If they're going to do something, you're kind of killing some birds with one stone by going to get Dosunmu plus, getting off the Joe money, which you probably have to do long term anyway. At least, maybe not even for next year, but the year after for sure. You definitely have to get off money for next year somewhat, at least, unless you're just willing to pay an exorbitant number in tax. I don't know. Like, that's one where I'm like, this is interesting to me.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It's similar to what they did with the Gordon Hayward deal, where it's like, okay, this could really, I think they thought that was going to help them that year. It ended up not. But with Dosunmu, you think he's going to come in and help us this year, but then it also gets you off longer term money if you want it to, because Dosunmu would be an expiring deal.
Yeah, and it's not that the Joe deal is bad or anything. It's just that their books are just going to be what they are moving forward, and he's making $11 million next year. And, they're already, just looking at the sheets here, like they're already 20 million over the second apron if you include Hartenstein's money, right? And they're 8 million. How far are they? I think they're trying to figure out what they are over the tax. They're 44 million over the tax. They're 16 million over the tax without Hartenstein's money, right? So, maybe you can keep Dosunmu as well. You then keep his bird rights, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that they don't spend. I'm just saying I wonder if they would want the flexibility, basically. That's always been my kind of dream for them.
Some of the other names I brought up that just like definitely aren't as attractive, but Benedict Mathurin, Colin Sexton, sure. Jeremy Grant, Najee Marshall.
Marshall has been pretty good and pretty fun recently. So I kind of like that. Kobe White is another name. Daniel Gafford is another name. Nick Claxton. RJ Barrett, like, again, I think Barrett is good. Nurkic, I mean, I'm so glad you brought up Nurkic. Nurkic, I think, is it 3 or 4 straight triple doubles?
It's crazy. Like, dude can offense. I don't know if he can defense, but the dude can offense.
I mean, he's okay on defense. Like, he's not mobile, and I don't think it works in the playoffs, but like, he does give them a bit of backbone on defense, at least.
You know where go ahead.
It's 3 straight triple doubles, by the way. It's 16, 18, and 10 in a win against Minnesota, 17, 11, and 14 in a loss against San Antonio, and 17, 10, and 12 in a loss against Miami by 30. So, like, triple double, but not an ideal result.
This got shot down real quick by somebody I talked to that's a Celtics fan / covers the team. But I threw out Nurkic to the Celtics, and I thought that was at least interesting to pair center minutes with Keita, just to give you the offensive option when you needed it, knowing that Keita can lock down the defense whenever you needed those minutes. And just, I think he could fit. I think he could make them real dangerous on the offensive end if you could survive defensively. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I don't know how Celtics fans would actually feel about it, though.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that you do this is Simons for Nurkic. And
so my thought was Tatum comes back. So essentially, my thought was Tatum comes back, which essentially is, I'm not saying you bring Tatum off the bench, but all of a sudden this whatever offensive stuff you're getting from Simons now is replaced by Tatum returning to the lineup, and it's going to be plus. And then you also get in Nurkic, who is also an expiring deal now that cap space wise going into the off season, and not cap space, that's the wrong term, but just cap sheet wise, that money would come off the books in the off season. So,
I mean, it really depends on if you think Simons can play in the playoffs. He's had some big games recently. Like, Simons has been kind of fun over his last 14 games. He's averaging 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 45, 45, 88. But Nurkic has also been quite good and kind of fills a hole there. And on top of it, if you threw Boucher into the deal, so if it was Nurkic for Simons and Boucher, and you'd have to, I would guess, throw a couple of picks in here just to get Utah to take back like an extra $10.5 million, right? And like Boston,
are we getting under the cap? Are we getting under the cap for Boston with this deal?
We're very close to getting under the tax. It's not quite, but it's like very close to where if you made another move, you would be able to do so. They're like, I think 12 million over the tax, and that would cut 10.6 million. Honestly, Simons and Boucher for Nurkic is kind of interesting. And if you threw like 2 second rounders to Utah, yeah. The thing is that I think Utah really likes having Nurkic and really likes him as like a developmental big for Deontay George and being able to get him separation.
Perfect. Sam, they can sign him back in the offseason. They don't need to win any more games this year. They can sign him back in the offseason with their cap space.
Kind of been my case the whole way too. That's an interesting one.
Real quick. I think Simons is vitally important to them right now with his scoring off the bench. I would not do this move if I don't think Jason Tatum is coming back, because I think you fill one hole and open another one without having Simons scoring. If Tatum is going to come back, then I would consider this type of move. If he's not, or I don't think he's going to, I think then I wouldn't do it. But I thought it was interesting.
Can I just say too, like, I've seen people say, oh, the Celtics, they desperately need a starting center, right? They need somebody who can come in and like be a guy that starts for them.
I disagree.
I think I kind of disagree too. Like, I think Keita can play real minutes.
They need another center. They need somebody else that can.
Exactly right. They need another center. They don't need like this guy eats 28 to 30 minutes a night center. They just need another big at the end of the day.
And here's why I thought about this the other day. Listen, I appreciate the heck out of Luka Garza. And he actually had a decent game against the Pistons. And I've seen him play hard as heck in other games as well. But it's like, if I can, like, it was like they're getting 48 minutes between Keita and Garza. If I can get now 48 minutes of Keita and, Yusuf Nurkic or whoever, like, that was I guess my argument is like, you're surviving Luka Garza minutes on the defensive end. And with all due respect to Luka Garza and how hard he plays, Nurkic can't be any worse than that. And so I just thought it was the perfect change up to Nimi Keita, who I find to be very interesting. Like, I think he can be very good defensively, play finish, rebound, all of that. He can give you 24 to 28 minutes. Go give me a backup center that can give me 20 minutes and ideally can do something a little bit different. And that's why I thought Nurkic was interesting, because now in those 20 minutes, I'm spacing the floor and I'm passing and I'm offensive rebounding, and I'm going to be impossible to defend if I'm the Celtics.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like, the Celtics are more than surviving the Garza minutes on defense. Like, it's the same defensive rating, whether he's out there or not out there.
Interesting.
So, like, they have figured that out with him. And over his last 18 games, Garza's averaging 9 points, 5 rebounds, shooting 60, 47, 85 in 20 minutes a night. So, like, Garza has been pretty useful for them recently, but I think Nurkic is better. If I'm being like, I think it would be an upgrade, and I think it would get them drastically closer to getting under the tax, which is something that, look, here's the other thing too. If they're not going to be under the tax next year, it doesn't matter.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the repeater. Yeah. They would be saving a lot of money by doing this deal. That's
the thing. It's the money, right? Like, if you get out of the tax, if you get under the tax, now you get paid as opposed to paying in.
Right. Like, well, even more than that, like, this year, if they were to do a Nurkic for Simons and Boucher deal and not get under the tax, right? They still save
30,
pretty 40? Close to like 40 to 45 million.
Yeah.
Just back of my hand math, right? Like, it's still a big number that they're saving financially by doing that deal. So I think that actually does track for them, to be honest with you.
Cool.
Okay. Final trade deadline takeaway here. What are the New Orleans Pelicans going to do?
Not trade Sadiq Bey, Sam. That's what I guarantee you. They're not trading Sadiq Bey.
Sadiq has been really good.
Really good.
I do just want to shout out Sadiq Bey. He has been, like, for a guy that's coming off of a serious injury recently, did not play a full season last year, and this year has played almost every game for the Pelicans and has been really good, averaging 16, 6 and 2 assists and shooting 45, 34, 83. And if you look at the most recent stretch, after he missed that just like 5 or 6 game run there, his last 9 games, he's averaging 19, 4 and 3, shooting 47, 39, 88. Like, Sadiq Bey has been really, really good this year, and I think would be a real get for somebody at the deadline for sure. Like, again, we brought up the Knicks last episode. That would make a ton of sense to me. But I think that more broadly with the Pelicans, what I'm struggling with them is that it's just very clear that they're in this like zone where they're trying to like both have it now and have the kids and try to develop the kids in Queen and Fears. And it's just not working. Like, anytime that you watch the Pelicans and the kids are on the court, they hemorrhage points is the reality. And look, I wasn't like the biggest Fears guy pre-draft, but when Fears is on the court, they lose by 13 points per 100 possessions, and they give up 125 points per 100 possessions defensively in medium to high leverage situations. If both Fears and Queen are on the court, the 650 minutes those two guys have played, they give up 125 points per 100 possessions defensively. With just Queen on the court, they give up 124, right? So like, I think you need to make a choice here if you're the Pelicans. Like, are we good? Are we trying to, maybe not win some games this year, but like, if we're trying to develop these guys, great, but we need to find a roster that makes sense with them.
Sure.
Because I would argue that the Pelicans like guard situation has probably been the worst in the league this year. And then I would even argue the big situation, which is something we thought would be true coming into the season. Like their big situation has probably been the worst in the league this year. And that includes Queen. So how do we make it work with these guys that we've invested so much in as a new front office? But then also try to make it work by keeping all of, according to reporting, Zion, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, right? When it just feels very abundantly clear to me that like the timelines for these two things don't match because Queen and Fears are still so far away. Like to me, there's just like an obvious answer here, and I know what I would be trying to do at least. But what do you think that the Pelicans should be doing?
So we said it on draft night. We critiqued the process of the trade, but then our biggest thing about Queen in New Orleans was that we thought it was a bad fit next to Zion Williamson. We said it from the start. Continues not to be a great situation. My very short answer
numbers on this too, Bryce. 383 minutes in medium to high leverage situations that they played, according to Data Baller. 111.4 offensive rating, 124.9 defensive rating. They lose those minutes by 13.6 points per 100 possessions. It's slightly better in all leverage situations, but like they played precious few minutes in blowouts together. So like really catastrophically bad when those two are on the court together.
So the short answer is you trade Zion Williamson. Like to me, that is the short answer. I think it's the simplest answer. I think in the most recent game, they did bring Fears off the bench. So if we want to, go even further, I think my answer would be I would move Zion Williamson. I would not trade Herb Jones or Trey Murphy right now unless I just got a deal that just blew me away. That was just like, there's no way we can turn this down. It's for Murphy, it's like the Desmond Bain deal. Herb Jones isn't going to get that, but just ridiculous off. I like those guys a lot. And to your point, I think those guys can help grow young talent. I would start Queen, and then I would find two players to fill out my starting lineup around those three guys that make sense and help amplify who they are as players. I would bring Fears off the bench as a backup point guard and let him grow in that role. That's what I would do.
I agree 100% with all of this. This is exactly what I would do if I was them. Honestly, I might start Fears just to lose games the rest of the year. Because like the Fears Queen combination just has no chance on defense.
It doesn't matter though. They don't have a pick, so they can win games. So we can still make strategy to. But sure,
good point. Honestly, it's true. Like they have no reason to tank. So, Fears' last 23 games, 12 points shooting, 43, 28, 83, but only getting to the line 2.3 times per game. 3 assists versus 2.5 turnovers. Look, it's just not going super well with Fears right now. It just feels, I don't know, like fairly clear to me at least that it's going to take quite a bit of time with him. His last 23 games, he has a true shooting percentage under 50%. So yeah, I look at this and I think that, bringing him along a bit more slowly maybe would be the right choice. Yeah, I agree with you. It's to me, the very obvious choice here is to trade Zion. And I don't understand why we wouldn't be going down this road, because there's just, I don't see a world where Zion and Queen work together.
So like, I wonder about starting a lineup. Like let's say you move, like, what if you started Alvarado? We talk about all the time, evaluating bigs and ball screens whenever they have guards who can actually navigate said screens. Like, I just wonder, like, hey, you know what? We're going to let Jose Alvarado play minutes with Derek Queen, because he will, like, we're going to tell him to navigate the heck out of everything. And then we'll put Queen in these different, whether it's true drop or whatever. And we're not switching, obviously. And then we can evaluate Queen and let him get a bunch of reps with a point of attack defender, you know, and like Herb Jones can do this as well. And I know there's been some injuries there, but I wonder about that. Like, what about just starting Alvarado, Jones, Murphy, Bay, and Queen? I don't feel like that's an awful context for Queen to be playing in. There's spacing there. There's, you know, not a ton of, like, well, yeah, you can let him do some of creation and let those guys play off the ball. And then you bring Fears off the bench, and maybe the bench unit isn't super conducive to him, but I would be interested in that. Like that roster's not going to win a bunch of games, but like we said, who cares?
Derek Queen, Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy minutes. So when those three are on the court together, 215 of them this year, they're winning those minutes by 7 points per 100 possessions.
Which seems like it is pretty important for a team that's 11-36. So interesting. I did not know that, for what it's worth. Like we didn't plan that ahead of time for the listeners.
So the Queen, Trey Murphy, Zion minutes. So I would argue that those are the three most important guys here moving forward, right?
Agreed.
All due respect to Herb, who I think is a stud as well on defense, but I think that those three are probably the three quote unquote most talented guys on the team: Zion, Queen, and Trey. When Zion, Queen, and Trey are on the court together, negative 6.4 per 100 possessions. When Queen and Williamson are on the court together without Trey, negative 18.4. And then when Trey and Queen are together, it's minus 6.5. So it's like basically the same whether Williamson's out there or not. And then when Williamson and Trey are out there, they win those minutes like very slightly without Queen. So all of the data points to something like very simple to me. The Zion and Queen minutes don't work. And you just drafted Derek Queen and gave up probably one of AJ DeBanza, Cam Boozer, you know, why is my brain breaking? Darren Peterson, Kingston Flemings, you know, Caleb Wilson, right? On top of giving up, I guess, you know, Asa Newell, who is something maybe, but like that's the guy you're invested in. The Zion deal is like kind of amazing insofar as they can get off that very easily. Like a team can use that as an expiring deal. They can use him as a player that they want long term if it works. I can't imagine that there are teams that wouldn't trade for Zion. It just might not be for like crazy value or anything. And right now, look, Bryce, like Zion's like playing well and is healthy, right? If you're not getting something for him now, where over his last 20 games, he's averaging 23, 6, and 3, shooting 63% from the field and getting to the line 7.5 times per game. I don't know when you're getting something for him. So I'm probably trying to move him at the deadline. That would be my first move. And you're right. If I got a Desmond Bane type of offer for Trey Murphy, I would probably look into that and consider doing it. If I got like 2 first-round picks and an interesting prospect for Herb Jones, I would probably look into doing that, right? Sure. But I would need overpaid for those guys by a real margin. For Zion, I think I'm just trying to like, if I can get some expiring money back and get a pick of some sort, even if I have to take back money, even if it's a situation where some team is trying to get off of bad money and taking a flyer on Zion, and I'm getting picks back for taking on the bad money, I'm probably still doing that because I'm still a good ways away from contending as long as the money isn't like 3 years out. If it's 2 years out, like I'm pretty okay with that.
Yeah, because you still got the Poole and the DeJounte Murray contracts you have to deal with and all of that. Like, so.
Yeah. I think that would be my move though. If I'm the Pelicans, like, yeah, I would, Troy Weaver's never going to move Sadiq Bey probably, but like I would look at that option if someone offered me something good for him. I would look at the Jose Alvarado deal if, someone offered me something good for him. Eve Missy, like it's hard because like I think I'm probably a little bit lower on Eve defensively than what some people are. Like he's at least an athletic big long term. He probably just needs to get into a different circumstance than this Pelicans team. And I think that there's a decent chance he'll be successful, but it's not working super well in New Orleans right now, I would argue. There are games though where I think he's pretty clearly their most effective big. Like he has some bad ones, don't get me wrong, but like there was a game against Houston that they lost by 9 where he was a plus 22, and there was a game against Brooklyn where they won by 3 and he was plus 23 and at 12 and 12, right? Like, game against Atlanta where he was even in terms of plus minus, and they lost by 17. They were plus 7 in Eve Missy's minutes against Orlando and they lost by 10, right? Like I think he's probably their most effective big, but I don't know that it totally works long term for him there either in a way that's wildly successful. If someone was willing to give me like first round capital back, like whatever that is, I'd probably look at that too.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense if there's a market for him out there to consider it. So I do. I mean, I know I joked about this. I kind of was joking about Sadiq Bey, but I do wonder if that contract is really good and he's playing really well. I do just kind of wonder if Troy Weaver is going to be willing to trade him twice in his young career. But I would assume that they would get something back decent because that contract is so good. And man, I'm super happy for Sadiq and how he's playing this year and how he's come back from that injury.
Yeah. Okay. Bryce, you're up with takeaways. Because yeah, like to me, like the Pelicans answer here is pretty simple. It's just whether or not they actually execute it.
Yep. So we're going to go away from the deadline to some extent, but we're going to talk about 3 different teams. Start in the East, and one of the best teams over all of these teams have been pretty good here since January to varying degrees. I think they're all like top 10 maybe in the month of January. But this team is actually number 1 in net rating since the turn of the calendar year. Has only equated to a 7-6 record. Some of that's by some big time blowouts, but the Charlotte Hornets, Sam. And my question here with Charlotte is, do they have a trio that you start moving forward with? Like, are we in on this LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller? I mean, I may have to take an L here at some point on the LaMelo Ball stuff. I said maybe they should be out of the LaMelo Ball business and move forward with these other 2. And we talked about lineup data. 328 minutes this year. Those 3 have a net of 9.5 via NBA.com. I'll be interested to see what, I know you used a different website for some of it, but where are we at on this trio, this team? Are they ready? And I have some questions, how do you build the roster around it? Like some of that stuff. I don't know, man. Like they're top 10 in offensive rating for the whole year, Sam. So obviously something is moving in a positive direction for this team. And I kind of wonder if you just keep riding that and then building out the roster around it.
The weird thing that's happening with the Hornets right now is like people that I feel like actually watch the games and watch the Hornets are really excited about the Hornets. They play like a really intoxicating, fun brand of basketball.
Yeah.
They're really strong on offense. I think a huge part of that is like the influence of Charles Lee coming in from Boston. Yep. They play very similarly to that team, right? Like they are out here trying to create open 3-point opportunities. They have taken 46% of their shots from beyond the 3-point line. That is 5th in the league right now. The thing that they also do is they crash the offensive glass like crazy with Moussa Diabate as well. Diabate is an elite offensive rebounder. Kalkbrenner, when he's in, is a fantastic offensive rebounder in his own right. But, even guys like, Bridges, Knipple, Brandon Miller, like these guys also will occasionally go in and grab an offensive rebound too and create second chances. So I think there are like a lot of reasons, but everything that I hear about, not everything, I shouldn't say that. It feels like the people who don't watch the Hornets often will be like, oh, like LaMelo, he's coming off the bench sometimes. And LaMelo started 16 of their last 19 games. And the only times where he comes off of the bench are like either on the front end or the back end of like back to back. Right. And in his last 19 games, like he's played all those 19 games, they're 9-10. Yeah. Like they're not blowing the doors off the place, but he's played every game, even though he's only playing 26 minutes a night. If they need him for a little bit more, like in the middle of a game, if it's a tight game, they can up that to like 31 or so. But honestly, I've actually generally liked LaMelo's performances a little bit better in this run. And yeah, like he'll have some games like the terrible game against Cleveland where he was 1 for 15, right? But I don't know. Like I've felt like his game has felt more fresh and like he's able to come in and like really play. And there again, like there are games where he doesn't get rhythm, but in 26 minutes a night in those runs, like he's averaging 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 rebounds. Yeah, he's still turning the ball over, but like he's getting out there chucking threes and like it's still a little bit too perimeter oriented for me, I guess. But it feels like it's working. Like it feels like the way that they're utilizing LaMelo's minutes is working. I think that you can certainly question whether or not in today's salary cap environment as to whether or not like LaMelo making what he makes, which, not an insubstantial number, right? Like he is up at 37 million this year, 41 million the next year, 43 million the year after that. Like you can question whether or not you can have a guy playing 26 minutes at those numbers. And I think that's reasonable. But the question for LaMelo has always been, can you keep him on the court? How do you keep him on the court? Because when he's on the court, it's quite good. He's played 19 straight games. And even though he's come off the bench, on the back end of or front ends of back-to-backs, it's kind of kept him on the court is kind of the evidence I have right now. So I like it. Like I'm pretty, as long, I don't know if he's comfortable with it. I've seen a lot of inferences that he's not, but I don't know. Like a lot of stuff I see, he's like kind of laughing on the bench with Charles Lee and like it, I don't know. It doesn't seem like maybe it is behind the scenes and I'm just not talking to the right people, but I haven't seen a lot of evidence that it's, going catastrophically either.
So he's on track to play the most games and most minutes since his second year in the NBA when he was an all-star. And my threshold when I watch LaMelo ball is how many just like outward negative possessions are there on each end? We know he's not a positive defensively. How many just outward like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that or gave that up or whatever. And then how many offensive possessions are like, come on, man, you can't take that shot or you can't make that play. And I feel like it hasn't been that many in my recent watches. Now, I will say my biggest worry with LaMelo outside of the injury stuff is I think in the high leverage situations, he can still sometimes default back to wanting to be the hero. And I don't even think it's from a negative place. It's just like, even in this Wizards game that I watched this morning, all of a sudden he had played really good all game long. There was very little like, what is that? Or what is that? Like all game. And then Washington went on a run in the fourth quarter with probably like 6 minutes to go. And he immediately takes an awful shot that is airballed. And it's like, there it is. Like, instead of just making the right play like he has been all game, he went into this mode of, I'm going to save the day. And maybe that can continue to get, taken out of his game. But in general, I'm just like, no, this all flows together real well. Knipple gets all of his usage. Brandon Miller gets all of his usage. This looks good. You brought up the Charles Lee. Like, I don't think anybody can run more variations in terms of combinations of ball screen actions than what they do. They will put Miller and Knipple in the short roll. They'll have LaMelo ghosting. They'll use their non-bigs as much as anybody. But then you also will run in Diabate and Kalkbrenner into it. And then, now the defense has something else.
Then it's like a Spain on the backside of it. Yes. You know what I mean? Like I love their ball screen actions. Yes. And again, it feels very Boston-y when I watch them. Like all of the different screening combinations, using guard to guards more consistently. I do think that it is very influenced by Boston when I watch them. And I think it's a fantastic way to create an efficient offense that is very clearly, working in spite of the fact that they don't really have like a starting caliber NBA center, all due respect to Diabate and Kalkbrenner. Like, yeah, I've really enjoyed, we've been talking about this the whole year. Like we've loved watching the Hornets the whole year. I think that they're a fun team that is clearly starting to figure things out. Now, to answer your question on, how do we build around this trio and everything, what I would ask you before we get there is, what have you thought of Brandon Miller's minutes?
Up and down. Like, I think he's been better than maybe what I was giving him credit for a couple weeks ago. And I've always been a big Brandon Miller supporter. I think where I'm at is, I think Brandon Miller is going to be a really good 2-level scorer in this league. I think he's going to knock down threes, and I think he's going to be able to get to the mid-range, knock down shots. My question is there ever an all the way to the rim game? And how much of a passer is he? And so that's where, and then if not, then that puts obviously a certain ceiling on him. And I think that's what gets me nervous about the trio a little bit is like this version of LaMelo Ball is cool, but it's not the number one option. What I just described of Brandon Miller isn't a number one option. Knipple might end up being the best shooter in the NBA once Steph Curry retires. But like, is he a number one option? So do we end up with like, hey, all of these guys are really cool number twos, number threes, but we don't have a number one? I think where I've gotten to though is like, I like them enough and I like them enough together. I'm willing to see it play out for longer than what I used to think. And then if nobody materializes as the number one, we don't draft one, whatever, then we'll just trade one. Like we'll attack that 18 months from now. I think I'm more okay playing that out after what I've seen over the last month and throughout the season.
Yeah, and look, like I've actually really liked Brandon Miller's minutes recently, I would say. It feels a bit more aggressive to me going to the rim and driving. And I think that he has like a little bit more space. I'm not sitting here saying that he's some exceptional downhill rim threat or anything, but I think we're actually seeing growth in that regard, where he is getting a little bit more comfortable using the threat of his shot to then pump fake and drive, right, and get downhill. And I think the spacing also just really generally helps Brandon Miller a lot. In his last 20 games, Miller is averaging 22 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 45, 39, 86. He's up at 4 free throw attempts per game. He's had some games where he's gotten there, 5, 6 times. He had one game against Milwaukee where he got there like a million times and had 31. But by and large, like I've actually liked the steps from Brandon Miller this year. Like I think that he took the jump that I expected last year. Like he's starting to take that jump now, I guess is what I would say. And it's just like a year and a half behind schedule because of the injuries, right? And he has to stay healthy and he has to put on more weight and he has to get stronger and be able to deal with bumps a little bit more consistently. I think that that's probably my like overarching question above everything with this Hornets, trio that we're trying to decide on here is can Miller and LaMelo stay healthy enough long term to consistently be able to like weaponize this trio enough to like make the playoffs, not just the play in, but like the top 6 of the playoffs. Right. But yeah, I mean, like here's what I would ask you now. I mean, the Hornets are sitting here. They're 12th in the Eastern Conference. They're 18-28. I mean, you look at the way that the East is shaking out. The Bucks ahead of them, probably not a team that is going to be ahead of them for much longer, it feels like. Chicago, like if they decided to sell their things at the deadline, they might end up as a team that stumbles down the order a little bit. Atlanta, Like I think they're probably going to make the play in. But do we end up in a world where Charlotte ends up in the play in and then like maybe makes some noise in the play in and ends up in the playoffs? Like I think that's not impossible is where I'm at.
It's not. My question back to you would be, do you want to? Do we need that this year? Or do we allow ourselves to get another top 7 or 8 pick and a chance to go get another dude? Or do we feel like I think that's why it was interesting is like, do we feel like we need to go do that again with this trio? My immediate response, I think right now would be trade Colin Sexton, whatever, find a way, rest LaMelo a little bit. I'm sure nobody would question that. Brandon Miller. And let's try to go, let's keep our odds as positive possible for one of these top 4 or 5 picks. And then we're going all in like 26, 27. We're not just trying for the play in. We're going for a top 6 seed. Like we are pushing forward after this season. And I think I feel that way right now because we've seen such a good stretch from them. They have a positive overall point differential this year, Sam. And again,
it is because of the blowouts.
I know. I get it. Like I understand that some of this is skewed because of the blowouts, but like you said, even before all of this, we thought it was okay, like this is an interesting team doing interesting things. I think Charles Lee is a really good coach. I don't know. I think the idea of where they're seeing them in a play-in scenario or a first round playoff game against the Pistons or the Celtics or whatever. Sure. A lot of data collection there that I think would be important. I don't think I need it right now though. I don't think I'm to that point yet with them. I think I'd be okay waiting another year before I felt like I needed to see that.
Yeah. I actually do think that's my big takeaway. I think Charles Lee's really good. Like based off of what I've seen this year, like I think that dude's a good coach.
Yeah, sure.
And I would be very happy if I was like a Hornets fan that I feel like I have like the coach that, might be able to help me get there long term. What I would say is this. So against the top 10 teams in the league, right? According to Cleaning the Glass, Charlotte is 4-8 this year. They have the 27th best offense in those games, and they have the 4th rated defense. So like very noisy and weird numbers. But right now, nobody is beating like the Vegas line, the spread, when they play top 10 teams more than Charlotte is right now, according to Cleaning the Glass. So and part of that could be that like the expectations for the team's a little bit too low and that bettors aren't giving them enough respect and everything. But I actually do think that they are closer than people think to being quite good. And to your point, if this draft was even a normal draft, I think I would say I want to keep the momentum that we have building here and just build that into next season. I wouldn't want to take games off. Like I wouldn't want to try and lose games. Like I would try and win every game and make the play in this year, frankly. This draft being as good as it is, all the way down to like 7, 8, 9, even maybe. Like if Keaton Wagler got down to like 9, can you imagine him with, LaMelo and Khan and, maybe he's like a guy that you can use to replace LaMelo down the road. So
that's what I was going to say
continues to develop. Like
if you end up with Cam Boozer or Caleb Wilson, those guys slot in really well. But even if you end up drafting Kingston Flemings or Keaton Wagler, like now you have optionality in terms of making a move. Or if you end up with Darren Peterson, again, optionality. So I that's why even if there's a little bit of positional overlap with who you may end up drafting, I think it's worth one more year. I think you want one more year of a draft pick.
I do too. I actually think you do too. Okay, Bryce, second takeaway from you.
This is a question, and our good friend and the driver of this podcast, GMAC, said something recently as we were talking about the New York Knicks that kind of caught me off guard and then made me start thinking. And I want to get your thoughts and I want to hash it out a little bit. Can a fully healthy, so Sam, we are we were having this conversation with the understanding that this team would be healthy, which is a massive question for them. Can a fully healthy Sixers team win the Eastern Conference?
Oh boy.
Can I just throw the idea at you? So Tyrese Maxey is incredible. And we've seen him be incredible in the playoffs already in his young career. Joel Embiid, in the games he's played this year, especially recently, but even in totality, Sam, in his 25 games played, is averaging over 30 minutes a game, not even shooting well from three, and is scoring 25. So you have a guy averaging 30, a guy averaging 25. Embiid can't move defensively, but he has size to protect the rim on the defensive end. VJ Edgecombe is, this wing, young, athletic, can take on some of these defensive matchups. I think Paul George in this world is slotted in as your third or fourth option. He's willing to take some of the tough defensive matchups. Even if he doesn't always hold up the best, he's willing to do that. And in a few minutes per game, you can still run your offense through Paul George. And then you have Kelly Oubre Jr., who just plays super hard and deflects passes and all of these things that fits in as a fifth starter. You have Grimes off the bench. And then my argument starts to break down after that. So we got to hash out the rest of the roster if we think this is a real thing. But that is my pitch.
So it's a great pitch, honestly. And I do want to give Paul George a little bit of love while we're here. I've actually really thought that Paul George has played well. He's not worth the money, or whatever. It is true. The contract is what it is. But I think he's actually played the role really well and has been a real positive player for the Sixers, especially over the last 15 or so games. He's been very good.
Yes.
Maxey in the playoffs, to your point, has played 29 games, 23 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 46, 39, 92 in those first two, the 2022 and 2023 series. He was very clearly the third option on that team. So very real run of incredible playoff success. And then 2024, he was amazing against the Knicks, obviously. So throw in Embiid. Embiid is obviously playing well right now. And if he stays fully healthy through a playoff run, the answer I think is yes, they probably can. It's just very hard to trust it. I mean, look, the Knicks game was hilarious because the way that Embiid just demolished Karl Towns was hilarious. And then they brought in Mitch in it was way harder.
Yeah.
For Joel to be able to do anything, really. Joel still scored. Joel had 38, 11, and 5 in that game. But it was interesting to see the way that the two countered. In Joel's last 16 games, he's averaging 29, 9, and 4, shooting 52, 33, 86 again, and getting to the line 10 times a game. Offensively, defensively, he's not quite what he was when he was an MVP candidate. But offensively, it's more perimeter based, and it's not as consistently, rolling to the rim and getting touches that way. But it's close to as productive, I would say. And I think it's hard to live that way. The theory in my head is that it's very hard for a big to play that perimeter oriented of a game at that usage when you don't move super well and you don't shoot quite as well as you want him to. But he's just proving me wrong. It doesn't matter. He's so good still with his footwork and his ability to get guys off balance. I'm just gonna have to take an L on Embiid. The way he's playing is incredible right now.
So here's what had me think. Oh, go ahead. Finish.
This is a fun team. This is a really, really good, enjoyable basketball team. And to your point, they are 10th in net rating over the course of the last 13 games. So the month of January. If you look at their point differential against top 10 teams in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass, they are 7th in point differential in those moments. 10th in offense, 5th in defense in those moments. If you just look at the teams ahead of them in point differential against top 10 teams in the league, it's Houston, Denver, Oklahoma City, San Antonio. So, it's 4 teams in the West, and then it's New York and Detroit. So, and then next, they're a full point ahead of Orlando. They're 2 points ahead of Boston in terms of point differential against top 10 teams. And look, we're dealing with 16 to 20 game samples in those moments, but some of that samples without Joel Embiid for them too. So yeah, the answer is yes. I think that they can win the East. I genuinely think they're in the conversation to win the East right now if they are fully healthy, and that is a massive if, and we'll see.
So here's where it really got me thinking was, and again, like I said at the top, this is the preface of that, and we all understand how big of an if that is. But how many series do they play in the Eastern Conference where they don't have 2 of the 3 best players in the series? If you listed the 3 best players in this series, how many teams do they play where they don't get 2 of those names? They do against Detroit. They do against Boston. I think they do against the Knicks.
It's a question with the Knicks. I think it's a toss up, against the Knicks. I would rather have Joel than Cat right now, but it's depending on what Cat you're getting, it's a toss up.
In a guaranteed Joel health situation, sure. Toronto.
In a guaranteed Joel health situation, it's not really a toss up. He's better than Cat.
There you go. And that's what I'm saying. Is in a guaranteed health, would the Pistons take the chance of trading Jalen Duren for Joel Embiid? I realize contract wise, it doesn't even make sense. Probably not. But in a situation where Joel Embiid is healthy going into a series with Detroit, going into that series, the Sixers would have 2 of the 3 best players. And they would with Boston. I think they would with the Knicks. They would with the Raptors, and probably with the Cavs as well. And so, again, if they're healthy, I'm not saying this guarantees. I realize right now I'm trying to I sound like I'm making the pitch. It's they're the favorites. That's not what I'm doing, and I don't believe that. And I'm not saying I would pick them to win a series against all of those teams. And I think their depth is a real question in the same way we talk about the Knicks' depth. All I'm saying is if this team is actually healthy where you can get 30 minutes of Embiid and 30 minutes of Paul George, they have a starting lineup in a 6-man that makes them very dangerous in every series they play. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so here's what I would say. The playoffs are a grind, right? We know that. And Joel's going to play every night in the playoffs. I don't know that I trust Joel to get through the grind of a playoff series or playoff run where you have to get through 3 straight consecutive series that are all probably going to be pretty grindy, I would argue.
With where they're at in the standings, yes. 100%, yes.
Yeah. They can lose any of these series to the point where they have to play probably 5 to 7 games in every series at least. They're not sweeping anybody, I don't think.
Right now, their path would be the Knicks, then the Celtics, then the Pistons. That wouldn't be very much fun.
Correct. So I find it hard to believe that they would get through a playoff series fully unscathed. If that was to happen, or a playoff run, not just a 1 series, but 3 straight series. If that was to happen, yes, they can win the East 100%. I'm finding it hard to wrap my head around that as a genuine possibility.
I agree.
Which makes it a little bit challenging, but I think what's most fun about this group is that they are playing this well. VJ is this ready already, which is great. Paul George is, playing solid minutes now. They're going to have to figure out what to do with the deadline. Maybe it's just you move the Lowry and Gordon deals and you convert Barlow and Walker. Maybe it's that you do something bigger to try and get all the way under the tax and still contend. right? I don't know what the answer is on this. They're going to have to get a little bit creative on that front, but I would imagine this team looks slightly different in construction on February 6th than what it does now, because they have to open at least the two-way spots to get those guys into the mix, because that's just the reality of where their situation is.
It's so really,
this team could look different post deadline and could actually be in a piece where they're more capable of contending.
Yeah, it's funny to me how many of these two-way conversations we're having right now. Maybe there's more of these every year than what I realize. I just feel like there's a lot of these conversations happening right now for teams where it really matters.
This is the most that I can remember.
Okay,
I think.
All right, so it's not just me.
The two right now that I'm looking at are certainly Philly. They're the obvious one. Really, it's three, I guess. The Clippers are a very obvious one, where Kobe Sanders and Jordan Miller, they're going to have to figure that out because those guys have to play. And then a sneaky one is Portland. Like Caleb Love and Edie Sissoko are really important for them right now, and they are probably going to have to figure out a way to convert those guys, and they're probably going to have to move some guys to do so,
well,
right?
Let's add another Spencer Jones for the Denver Nuggets.
Yep.
And I'll throw in another one that Dennis Jenkins for the Detroit Pistons is another one that needs to happen.
Yeah. No, Dennis is 100%. Yeah. But trying to figure out, do you try, and if you're Portland, do you move Matisse Thybulle's deal and you convert one of these guys and then kind of figure out the rest, right? Like there are a lot of these situations at the deadline that will have to get sorted out.
Yep.
Okay. Number 3, Bryce.
So you mentioned the Portland Trailblazers, and I
tried to lead you right in.
I know. You did a great job. And then I had to bring up some other names because I can't help myself. I just kind of wanted to take stock of, and now I wonder where my son gets it from. I just kind of wanted to take stock of where this team is at right now. This is another team, as I mentioned at the top, right? All three of the teams I brought up have been top 10 in net since the turn of the calendar. Portland is actually 7th, and they are 9-3 in their last 12. And, they're sneaky, Western Conference. All of a sudden, they're 9th in the play-in. Golden State is above them by a couple games. We know the situation there. I don't think they're catching anybody else, but this could all of a sudden be a team that ends up 8th in the Western Conference and, maybe truly ends up as the 8th seed. They probably get swept by the Thunder, whatever. But I just wanted to go through their roster a little bit and who do we buy? What do we buy? What does this mean going forward for a team that's all of a sudden 500?
Can I just real quick note? Last year, it felt like they beat up on some really bad teams, right? To get their record back to where it was late in the year. That is not really the case here. They're 10-4 in their last 14. To start that run, they beat Boston at full strength. In the middle of that run in January, they beat San Antonio without Wembanyama, to be clear, and without Devin Vassell, who's been out for a little while and is just now getting back, it feels like, probably this week. They swept that home in the 2 home games against the Rockets, where the Rockets, I believe, did not have Alperin in that run, but was fully healthy Rockets outside of that. Played a really competitive game against the Knicks in that run as well, where the Knicks were at full strength in that game. Beat Atlanta, beat a Lakers team without Luka and Reeves, and I think Ayton didn't play in that game either. And then against Miami, they beat a Heat team that did not have Hero or Khalil Ware, but was fully healthy. I say this to say that last year when they went on this run, they beat some really bad teams and they got it back and they took care of business against the bad teams. Right now, even though some of those teams were injured, they're taking care of more business against good teams now, which it feels like is the next step in their evolution. And I think that that's at least important to call out as well. Look, again, 6-12 against top 10 teams in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass, 26th in offensive rating in those moments. But again, you just want to know, like they're taking that next little jump, in my opinion.
Okay, so who do we buy on the team? My idea was like we don't have to go through every single player on the roster, but a little bit of just like, what do we think is real for this team moving forward? And I do want to start with Deni Avdija, because Deni has been awesome. And I guess my question with Deni isn't like, is it real or not? Obviously it's real, but do we think Deni is this on a title contender? Like, do we think Deni Avdija is the true focus number one option? Or do we think that eventually something quote unquote better has to come in and he has to slot a little bit more into a number two type of guy?
I think my answer is number two, because I don't think he's going to be like a top 7 player in the league at some point. But I think he has the ability to slot into that number 2 role well. Yeah. Now that he's shooting threes and like just downhill drive, like it reminds me somewhat of Jaylen Brown. Is like, I think that's what it could look like as a number 2, is like him playing like a Jaylen Brown next to a number 1 kind of role. So yes, like I'm fully in on Deni. This is obviously the best deal in the league. To me, at some point in the next 18 months, they need to find a way to clear one of Jeremy Grant or Drew Holiday off of this roster in order to renegotiate and extend his deal. It doesn't have to be now, but you have to figure out a way to add more years to his deal. And you should be able to do so at a reasonable number, because you'll be adding $30 million potentially to his contract in 1 year. So you should be able to get it at like a non-max number, making it still a very real discount on what you're getting on Deni. But you do need to find a way to do that, I think. And that doesn't have to be this deadline. It doesn't even have to be this offseason. It does need to be by the summer, to me, of 2027.
So for the listeners, Sam is essentially explaining what the Grizzlies did with Jaren Jackson Jr. this offseason, just so you guys kind of have an understanding, because the downside of a descending contract is it's darn near impossible to extend off of, especially when it's the best one in the entire NBA. And Deni Avdija has outplayed it so much. So we're in lockstep on Deni Avdija. I think the more interesting conversations, like I think we both agree Toumani Camara is in a very upper tier of perimeter defenders in the NBA. He's a starting caliber wing forward who, may not be, great offensively, but like he's a starter, right? Like he's a two-way starter that they need to prioritize. They've already prioritized moving forward. We're in lockstep there, right?
Yep. He's on a deal that's going to pay him like $20-ish million a year over the next 4 years after this one. Totally fine contract to me. He started the year, I think, a little bit slowly.
He did. Yes. He was like the worst quarter 3-point shooter in the NBA at one point. I think it's gotten better, but yeah, I believe in money.
Yeah. I mean, if you remove his first 15 games of the year, he's shooting 45, 38, 71. Whereas in the first 15 games of the year, it was pretty rough there for a minute. He was shooting 39, 30, 71 in the first 15 games of the year. But he's rebounded to the level that we expect. Toumani is a guy that I'm keeping for sure.
So I think the two most interesting, like Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday, as you mentioned, like I don't think those. I think the most interesting names, and there's some others we could talk about. You mentioned Caleb Love, CD Sissoko on the two ways, all of that. I think are Donovan Clingan and Shaedon Sharpe. I think Clingan's the easier conversation, so I would like to talk about him first. Yeah. I think you think Clingan is like foundational center, right, for them moving forward.
Yeah, I think Donovan's a stud. Donovan in his last 20 is averaging 13, 12, and 2 assists, shooting 59% from the field. He's shooting 38% from 3 on 63 3-point attempts. But like, again, I'm going to need him to prove that like over a real sample. Like I might need 2 years of sample of him shooting 38 from 3 while shooting 58% from the line. I'm gonna need a long time, especially given the way it looks. Like, it looks cleaner than what it did previously, but it's going to take 2 years, I think, for me to buy it, but it doesn't matter because I think he is so good on defense. I think that he is incredible as a drop coverage big. He cleans the glass at an exceptional level. To me, he is very clearly the number 2 guy in the hierarchy. He's ahead of Kamara to me.
So we've essentially locked in 2 wing forward positions and the center, and I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
So my final question, because we haven't seen Scoot Henderson play this year, so there's not a whole lot to talk about there. And, Damian Lillard is
like, Bryce, what I would tell you is Scoot is by far the most important part of their conversation.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I want to clean this, and then we'll look at where is Shaedon Sharpe then based on the season he's had in terms of we can now start to move forward. Like, is he your starting 2 guard and you feel really good about that? And he's your starting 2 guard for the rest of this year. And maybe he's your starting 2 guard next year. I'm just saying, like, big picture, I feel like we've probably seen a little bit of growth from Shaedon. Maybe offensively, I think the defense is still a real question, but it's like, are you penciling him in as your starting 2 guard with this group or no? Like, what have you seen from him this year and where are you at with him?
The good news with Shaedon is that I don't think it has to be one or the other, because his deal, yes, it's extended all the way through 2030, but he's going to be making like 12 to 13% of the cap during that run, right? So yes, like, you would love that to be starter money, and you would love for him to emerge into being a starter in that window, because you would be getting a real discount on him being a starter if that was the case. But I remain like a little bit skeptical as to whether or not he's that. I know he's averaging 22, 5, and 3 this year, and he's shooting it like a little bit better, which is good. The defense still drives me insane, like truly just drives me absolutely out of my mind. I don't know totally what to do with him yet. It's worth noting, in his last 10, he's scored at least 19 in every single game. And, we're in the middle of a real hot shooting run from him where he's at 48% from the field, 39% from 3, 76 from the line, and has been okay, I would argue, with the decision making. So you hope that this little run here where they've been successful continues to allow him to grow moving forward. I still have questions, but I think you continue along with Shaedon because of the flexibility that the contract grants you now. There's no reason to give up on Shaedon right now, because if he's a 6th man, that's fine, given the money he's set to make for the next 4 years. If he's a real starter, it's a bargain and he gets better, great. But there's just not, there's enough flexibility there to where I think it can work.
Which is why we were fine with the contract when it was signed. I agree. 100%. I would continue to start him, see how it fills out. I think ultimately, if you made me make a decision right now, I think I would still put money that he ends up being a really, really good 6th man. I think he could flourish in that role. And I think some of that is because of the way I feel like Shaedon wants to play. I think it would fit him really, really well. So with that said, I guess my final question here is then, what is it moving forward? Like, how quickly then do they attack? Can they attack that backcourt and the depth? Do they need to? How long do we wait for the Scoot Henderson stuff? This is where Scoot comes into play. How quickly and how aggressively do we start moving this thing forward, and what needs to be attacked?
Well, so to me, the key for them is that now that we feel great about having Denny, we feel great about having Klingon and Kamara and Scoot. And those are the guys like really that are driving them to a 500 record right now. Like those four, I would argue. You can make a case that Drew has been useful. He's been good when he's been out there, and Grant has made shots this year, and Caleb Love has certainly been a guy that has really helped them off the bench this year for sure in a surprising role. But the four guys that are like really driving it to me are Denny, Kamara, Shaden, and Klingon right now, especially given that those are the only guys that have played 40 games on the roster outside of Sissoko. Grant and Drew Holiday have combined to play 48 games. That's why I feel like a little bit more comfortable and aggressive on like moving the Grant or Holiday or both money now to try and set up a more flexible cap sheet for them. Because I think that's like their most important thing moving forward now is I think you and I probably think they're one guy short, right?
Yes.
And maybe that guy is Scoot. Like maybe he can be that guy. We have no idea based off of what we know. Right?
Correct.
But there's no reason to like give up on that unless you're getting a star in return. Right? So if I'm them, I'm trying to find a way to open up my flexibility long term and also potentially consolidate what I have now by maybe it's going out and this summer you can go get a like even better free agent by getting off of the Grant or Drew money. Maybe there are just like a ton of options that open up, I think, if you do it this way. And if I was Portland, like I would probably be a bit more aggressive on really the Grant money. Like that would be the one. Like I think Drew is still pretty good. If I could get off of the Grant money this deadline, like I would feel really good about that.
Yeah, and honestly,
or even in the summer. It might be in the summer, but yeah.
He's probably more the one that you just don't need anymore with how Denny and Tumani are. Because like there's just no reason. I mean, I realize you can start him and play Denny at the 2, whatever. But I mean, next year, you could come into the season, and this may be the play, right? Like you get off Jeremy Grant and you come into the season and I don't know who comes off the bench. Like, I don't know which veteran is going to be willing to do it. Well, I guess it'd be 2 guys, but your backcourt is Scoot, Dame, Drew, and Shaden Sharp. Like that's already pretty crowded.
That's like the other thing I wanted to bring up.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's almost
like I get it that Dame is coming off of an Achilles. I get it that Dame, missed an entire year and everything, and like was not great on defense in Milwaukee and everything. Dame is still like a 24-7 guy. The last time we saw him, like Dame is really good, and they have him on a mid-level deal moving forward.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
if Dame is that good still, it changes things dramatically for them.
Sure.
Now, Dame is also, already 35, will be 36 in July. So is it reasonable to expect Dame to be a 24-7 guy? Probably not, but also 36-year-olds are pretty good around the league. Like the 36-year-old, like NBA all 75 team guys that are also around the league right now are also still pretty good. And we've seen some of those guys come off of injuries. I don't know. And maybe Dame's presence has helped Scoot take the next leap, right? Or maybe he's helped some of these other guys take the next leap. Like the other thing about moving Grant or Drew, but I'd be trying to move Grant more aggressively, is that you still have the veteran presence in Dame and Drew that it doesn't really hinder you that much in terms of like getting rid of the vets and everything, right? To help the kids get better and improve. So Yeah, I would be a little bit more aggressive in trying to get off of the Grant money now or in the summer than what I think they might be, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm with that. I think the most important thing is what you brought up at the top with Denny is they got to start planning how they're going to do that, bump and extend, because he's proven to be very important and they got to make sure they make that happen.
That's right. Like, I think the planning starts now. It doesn't start, or it starts within the next 6 months. It doesn't just like come down to the wire in 2027 when you have to do it. Like, I'm trying to do this as soon as possible in order to open up my books and create flexibility.
100%.
So, and I think it's easier to do that. Like, I often think it's easier to trade guys that have 3 years left on their deals for 2 years left on their deals, right? Like, I think teams can sometimes just look at it as like, okay, like we're taking on an extra year. It's whatever. We'll figure it out in 2 years when we have to figure it out. If you're trying to trade a guy that has 1 year left for an like if you're trying to trade for expiring money where you're immediately creating the space, it can often be a little bit more challenging. So I think that I would be trying to be aggressive and move the Grant deal now. But to your point, like, this team has a lot of keepers is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, they have a lot of the guys that I think are going to be on like the teams that finish in the top 4 in the West at some point. And I do believe that is where this is going for the Blazers. I understand that they're like, people question their front office all the time and things like that. They've been very aggressive in trying to get certain guys and, not necessarily prioritize flexibility all the time and everything. They've also done a pretty good job of like evaluating talented players and bringing them in. Evaluating Kamara and making sure that you got him in the Ayton deal. Trading those picks for Denny.
Yeah.
Getting Klingon to fall at 7 and taking Klingon. That was an obvious pick, but it was a good pick. Evaluating Caleb Love and bringing him in as a 2-way was great. Taking a second chance flyer on CD Sissoko has really paid off for them. Like, even like, look, Blake Wesley has played 6 games for them. I'm not going to sit here and like try and make a case for Blake Wesley, but like, Blake Wesley, like, at times, showed a couple of flashes late last year for San Antonio. I thought that, made you buy into him maybe being something. And look, like, the Young pick is totally insane and it is what it is, but like, they've gotten more right than they've gotten wrong, I think, to this point.
Yeah. I think the other thing with them is interesting too, is their, just to mention here, their pick is top 14 protected. So it'll be kind of interesting how things play out the rest of the year with them. Not sure how much I don't know how much I don't want to say care. Obviously they care, but it seems like they would rather go ahead and make the play-in and make the playoffs than prioritize losing and keeping that. If they're right there in that range.
The difference between them and a team like Utah, right, is that if Utah doesn't send the pick to Oklahoma City this year, it becomes gone. 2 seconds, I believe. Yeah. Or maybe it expires totally, something like that. The pick that Portland owes Chicago is top 14 protected this season, next season, and in 2028. So they want to make the playoffs at some point in the next 3 years for sure. And I'd be stunned if they didn't make the playoffs in the next 3 years. But beyond that, even, the question to me is, I don't love the 2027 draft at the very least. And I'm like a little bit questionable on the 2028 draft even.
Staying in this specific draft, though.
Is staying in this specific draft somewhere in the 9 to 14 range or whatever they would be more valuable than that pick moving next year? I think if I'm them, I probably am just going for it, to be honest with you. That's kind of what they've built this organization on so far, is going for it and just like trying to compete and win. And I respect that, honestly. I love that they've made bets on these guys. This is the thing that I talk about all the time. Like, put your markers down on guys that you believe in, and they've done that, and they're growing and getting better as an organization. So I just respect it a lot.
For sure.
Even though, like, I have questions. They have some things that they have to fix, undeniably. But I am a fan of this organization by and large.
Yeah.
Okay. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack. If your favorite team plays the Pistons, for example, if you are who did they play tonight? Why am I blanking? We already talked about this. A Sacramento Kings fan, I will have notes and analysis on the Kings as well as the Pistons. Game Theory Substack, where I did finally get a Peyton Watson breakdown done over there, and we'll try to do some as I can. And then, of course, Game Theory Podcast right here with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will be back on the Substack on Tuesday. Go subscribe to the Substack, gametheorysamv.substack.com. You will get the NBA Draft Show. Go there, hit the subscribe button. It is the best place to get NBA draft content, just point blank. Between all of the breakdowns that we do, I have already pulled tape on Keaton Wagler, AJ DeBanza, Kingston Flemings, Dalen Swain, that I will be doing this week at some point. And I am excited to talk through all of those things. Plus, you'll get Bryce and I talking about draft prospects.
And I will also say that is the one place I do check the comments right now. I feel like I owe that. I mean, I know people are usually over there for you, not for me, but we do engage in the comments of the Substack. And we do I know you do on YouTube. I don't check the YouTube comments as much anymore. And sometimes things can get missed on social media. But right now on the Substack, like, I get a notification, I go over, I look. I think you and I actually commented the same thing on Darren Peterson.
We did
at literally the same time. But I was thinking about is like, there's a little extra benefit right now. You can get our attention over there to respond to comments on the Substack on the draft show. So go check it out.
Go to the Substack. We appreciate everybody who subscribes there. You guys keep this thing going for sure. We'll be back on Friday or before then if there's a trade that happens. So I'm guessing that something happens this week would be my read. Just because we're closing in on the deadline in 10 days from when this got published. So keep it locked here. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll be back soon. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.